Hinata sat staring up at the girl before her, in a mix of emotions. She felt mortified that she had been caught spying on the two Uzumakis and the Uchiha. She also was in a bit of pain, due to her fall from the tree and the small burns that marked her clothes and skin where the fire blast had struck her. But more than all of that, she felt fear. The girl in front of her was so intimidating, the aura of malicious glee so bright around her, that had Hinata not been afraid she would have been envious of the display. After all, surely her family would value her more if she could be that intimidating. Unfortunately, she could not look that intimidating, and was currently at the mercy of the girl who could, Azula Uzumaki. Azula had been a fixture in Hinata's mind now for some time. When she first saw the older girl, she hadn't known what to make of her. She had been looking for her crush, Naruto, in the village so that she could indulge in her habit of watching him from afar. When she finally found him, he had been walking next to an older dark-haired girl that Hinata did not know. It was weeks later when Azula had come to the academy that Hinata learned her name. It was also the first time that Hinata began to suspect that the older girl was starting to change her beloved Naruto. Her Naruto would never have struck such a fierce blow against his teacher. Hinata knew that it had to be a new influence on the boy that would cause him to do such a thing, and the only new influence that she had seen around the boy was Azula. With these things in mind, she had followed Sasuke and Naruto as they left the academy to meet up with Azula. She had intended to spy on the group and learn what sort of things this girl was teaching them, to see if she truly was corrupting the boy she loved. Of course, before she had been able to learn anything, she had been discovered. She had been knocked from her hiding place, and before she even had the chance to explain what she had been doing, Azula had dragged her off into the trees and thrown her on the ground before her. "Well," Azula said. "Who are you, girl, and why were you spying on us?" Hinata started to stammer out. Azula rolled her eyes. Great, she had gotten a stutterer. How was she supposed to properly interrogate this silly girl and learn what she was here for if she couldn't even form proper words? Still, she did need to find out why this girl was spying on her and Naruto and Sasuke. "Oh, come on girl, spit it out." "I'm not going to hurt you. Not yet at least," Azula stated. That comment nearly made Hinata collapse into unconsciousness, but she fought to stay awake. There was no telling what would happen to her if she fainted in front of this cruel girl. Furthermore, now was her chance to find out what Azula's intentions were with Naruto. She had to stay strong and force herself to get through this. I am Hyuga Hinata. I came here to see how Naruto-kun was doing after what happened with Mizuki-sensei. Azula narrowed her eyes and the blue-haired girl. "Why were you hiding in a tree then? For that matter, why didn't you just talk to him at the academy? Surely, there was nothing keeping you from approaching him there or earlier in the day." Azula's voice trailed off as her mind began to look over what she had learned of this girl. Azula lifted her right hand to her mouth and crossed her left arm over her stomach as she let out a positively malicious laugh. She couldn't help herself. If the situation was what she thought it was, then this girl was even more pathetic than she looked. Oh, and the fun she would get out of this conversation would be satisfying indeed. "Why are you laughing?" Hinata asked, giving the older girl the best glare that she could, which wasn't very good. Azula let out a few more dark chuckles before turning her gaze back on the younger girl. "Because of you," she answered. "Well, really, because of how pathetic you are. I'll bet just about anything that you have pretty big crush on Naruto, and that since you're so painfully shy, you can't even say a single word to him." Azula smirked as she watched Hinata's face get covered in a rather impressive blush. So tell me, girl, why do you like my Naruto-kun? Azula asked, using the phrase my Naruto-kun to both mark her own territory and to try and infuriate the girl. Hinata for her part blanched when she heard the older girl's words but did her best remain strong and confront this girl. This was for Naruto. Because he is my hero. He is strong and kind and he never gives up, even when he fails or others try to push him down. And Naruto-kun is always nice to everyone and he would never hurt anyone, at least and not you until. Hinata's words started coming out more in stutters as she lost her confidence and momentum. Until his fight with Mizuki, Azula said, picking up the sentence where Hinata had left off. And he would never have done such a thing before he met me. Is that what you are trying to say, girl? The white-eyed girl looked at Azula warily but nodded slowly. Azula merely gave a grunt and crossed her arms. Well, too bad. Naruto isn't here to be your shining golden hero, he isn't here to be your paragon of kindness. You said he would never intentionally hurt someone? I don't think I've ever heard someone say something so foolish. He is training to become a shinobi, a hardened killer and soldier. He wants to be the best shinobi he can be, which by definition means he will have to hurt and kill people. You might be right in thinking that I jump-started his exposure to that hard fact, but I guarantee that he would have had to hurt someone later on. If your impression of him was right, then it is probably a good thing I met him when I did, otherwise he might have learned that lesson too late and gotten himself killed. It is clear to me based on your words earlier that you're little more than a weakling, girl. Not only that, but if you think that Naruto will swoop down one day and save you from all your insecurities and shower you with all the attention and praise you want, then you are not just a weakling but a delusional one as well. It was at this point that Azula's face gained an especially hard look. But let's assume for a moment that your delusions are more than that one day Naruto notices you and comes and sweeps you off your feet. What makes you think you are worthy of his attentions? Naruto is related to me by blood, girl, which means that he is royalty, true royalty, unlike most of the clans here in this village. I understand that your clan is held in very high esteem here in Konoha and even in some areas in other nations. But believe me when I say that your bloodline's nobility has little meaning before the ancestry that Naruto and I share. We are not just part of a random clan of warriors, we are descended from the strongest warrior nation to ever exist, and more than that, we are from a bloodline that was granted rule by divine right. I'll tell you another thing as well, even if your clan's blood was worthy of mixing with ours, you specifically are not. You are far too weak and pitiful to ever be worthy of Naruto, so take my advice and just give up on ever being with him. Azula stood there for a moment, letting her words sink into Hinata, before turning and walking away. Hinata for her part just sat there on the ground, tears welling up in her eyes. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. This girl had taken everything that she loved and admired in Naruto and torn it to shreds and told her it was nothing but a childish dream. She had told her that she was completely unworthy of ever having Naruto's attention, let alone his affection. Azula had even said that her clan was unworthy their bloodline, something that Hinata had never heard of anyone doing. Worst of all, she had told the younger girl to give up. No one in Hinata's family, save for Neji, had ever told her to give up. Her father often told her how disappointed he was in her, but he had never once told her to stop trying for something no matter how badly she was outmatched or unsuited for the task. Neji had told her to give up before, but Hinata always assumed that he only said such things because he was still upset over his father's fate, that he didn't truly mean it, but her father, who never spoke anything but cold hard facts, had never once told her to give up. Yet this girl, Azula Uzumaki, had flat out told her to give up, as if it was an order to be obeyed absolutely. Hinata looked up at the older girl as she walked away and in a moment of despair and utter rage gained the courage to once again speak up. Why you don't know Naruto-kun? You probably don't even care for him like I do. Why you're just a monster. Azula stopped mid-stride and turned her head back to look at the Hyuga, giving a small smirk as she did so. Maybe I am a monster, but I am also the person who's done more for Naruto than anyone else before me, and I am the one for whom he cares most in this world. That is more than you will ever be able to say. With those final words, Azula turned away from the other girl once more and walked off through the trees back to the training ground where Naruto and Sasuke were waiting, leaving Hinata sitting on the ground as tears began to fall freely from her eyes. Azula walked back onto the clearing where she had left Sasuke and Naruto. She found the two boys sitting and conversing quietly, although they broke off their conversation when they saw her approaching. Naruto jumped up and trotted over to Azula, meeting her halfway. Hey, Azulaheim, who was that? I think I recognized her for a moment. What did she want? Naruto asked. Azula smirked as the boy all but bounced his way to make sure that a Hyuga girl was alienated from Naruto. Another rival for the boy's affections just would not do. No one you need to worry about, Naruto. It was just an annoyingly nosy person who would have interfered in our meeting. Naruto stopped his bouncing and blinked pensively. Oh, okay then. Naruto was still curious about the girl and he was fairly certain that he recognized the girl from his class at the academy, although he couldn't remember her name. She was so shy and quiet half the time he forgot she was even there. Still, he would take the time to talk to her when next he saw her, and then he could find out why they had been watching the meeting. With that matter settled for now, Azula looked up from Naruto at Sasuke, who was still sitting where he had been. The dark-haired boy interested Azula. She had been able to observe him for only a few moments thus far, but he displayed qualities that she liked. There was a seriousness about him that indicated he was far less inclined to treat his training as a game. Furthermore, he carried himself in a way that showed he was constantly on guard, ready to react to a threat at moment's notice. With traits like those, it was little wonder to Azula that the Uchiha was at the top of his class, and with any luck these were qualities that would rub off on Naruto. Perhaps a friendship between the two boys would not be a bad idea after all. Well, now that I have taken care of our uninvited guest, we can get down to the purpose of this meeting, she said, folding her arms and looking at Sasuke. Naruto tells me that you want to begin training with him. Why? From what I have been told, you are the top of your class and always study and train alone. You apparently even gone out of your way to avoid being around your peers when you are not at the academy, so why the sudden urge to train with Naruto? Sasuke met the gaze of the brown-eyed girl with his own coal-colored eyes. He held the stare for a moment before answering. Because he proved himself to be strong. Azula raised an eyebrow at the Uchiha's answer. Oh? Elaborate, please. Sasuke leaned forward and brought his hands together, folding his fingers in front of his face. In his spar with Mizuki-sensei, he managed to catch the man off guard and even wound him. Mizuki-sensei is a chunin and has far more experience than many in the village. Being a chunin makes him part of the upper echelon of the village's shinobi, most of which are genin. He did not gain that rank by luck. Yet despite his obvious skill and experience, Naruto was able to wound him, accident or not. That mere fact states that Naruto has the potential to very strong. Sasuke took a moment to pause and let the girl consider his words, before continuing. I have a certain goal in life, one that I must achieve before I can do anything else. I have to take revenge on someone powerful. So if I am to accomplish my goal, I will need to be powerful myself. That means I can't spend my time playing and having fun like the other kids in my class do. I have to train and hone my skills to perfection. I'm not against having friends or allies, but I refuse to waste my time on anyone who will slow me down or not take their training seriously. Until now, I had assumed Naruto was weak and would therefore slow me down. He has proved me wrong, so I now see a potential ally and equal in him. Azula continued to stare at the younger boy as she thought about his words. Everything he had said was logical and had the ring of truth to it. She didn't know who the boy wanted to kill so badly, and frankly, she didn't really care. All that mattered is that it gave Sasuke a drive to succeed. A drive that would very likely spread to Naruto and help him increase his own skill. The more she thought about, the more it became clear that a friendship between Sasuke and Naruto would give more benefits than drawbacks. It was a simple decision then. Very well, I shall allow Naruto to train with you. But keep in mind that neither of us will teach you fire bending. Even if you had the ability to use it, which I doubt you do, it is something that must remain within our family. Sasuke nodded. As I told Naruto before, I understand the need to keep clan techniques hidden from outsiders. Good. Oh, and Naruto? Azula said, turning to face the blonde with a stern look. Naruto immediately straightened up as Azula addressed him, giving her all his attention. Yes, Azulaheim? I don't think this will be much of a problem with Sasuke-san, but on the off chance you two decide to stop training and do something else, please refrain from pulling any pranks. You are royalty after all, you need to act like it. The boy frowned for a moment in disappointment, but perked up quickly. You got it, Azulaheim. I won't let you down. I'll be on my best behavior, I promise. Azula relaxed and gave the boy a small smile of approval. I expect nothing less. Now then, I must be off, you two have fun training. Naruto be back at the apartment by sundown. Azula turned away from the two and began walking out of the training area. Wait, Azulaheim, where are you going? Naruto shouted after her. Azula stopped and turned to look back at the blonde. Oh, didn't I tell you? I have a meeting with the police chief today. I'm going to find out if I'll be able to join. Naruto blinked. Oh. Well, good luck. Thank you, Naruto. Remember to be back by sundown. With that, Azula left the two boys alone. The first thing Azula noticed when she entered the police chief's office was the fact that it was incredibly plain. There were no pictures on the wall nor any trophies or awards of excellence. The only decoration was the leaf symbol of Konoha on one wall and a faded red and white fan on the other. There were two filing cabinets in the back of the room near the only window. There was only one chair in the room, which sat behind the desk of the police chief. The second thing Azula noticed was the woman sitting at said desk. She was a stern-looking woman wearing standard attire for shinobi of Jounin rank. She appeared to be in her early 30s, but had a few worry lines on her face. There was a deep scar running from her right temple to just above her chin. Her dark black hair was pulled into a ponytail that fell to her shoulders. In the corner of her mouth she held a small pipe with a steady stream of smoke flowing from it. The woman looked up from the file she was holding in her hands as Azula entered the room. She placed the file off to the side and rested her right arm on the desk in front of her and reached up to grab her pipe with her left hand. She looked at Azula for a long moment, sizing her up, before letting a stream of smoke flow from the corner of her mouth. You must be Uzumaki Azula, the woman said. My name is Saratobi Amaji. I'd say it's nice to meet you, but I'm far too busy to pretend that this is anything more than an annoying distraction from my work. You know, when the Hokage told me he had a potential recruit for me, I wasn't expecting a little girl. Azula felt her anger flare at being called a little girl, but she kept it in check. I think you'll find that I am more skilled than my age lets on. The woman let out another stream of smoke from her mouth. That may be, but you're not a shinobi, just a civilian. As such, I have no records as to what your combat proficiency is, or what skills you possess, or how work with others. I don't like not knowing things, girl, especially not when it concerns my own police force. In fact, you could even say I loathe not knowing things. I know everything about my men, even the civilians I have in the force. I know what their names are, how old they are, where they come from. I know who they are married to, who cheating on their spouses with, and what they eat for lunch. I even know when they take a crap. So let's get something out in the open right now. As of right now, you are an unknown to me, and that means I don't like you. Without the Hokage's recommendation, I wouldn't even be bothering with you. But he did, so I am. I'm going to give you an evaluation. If you pass, you may join the civilian part of the police. If you fail, I get to kick your scrawny ass out of my building and laugh while I do it. The Hokage trusts my judgment, so I get the final word as to whether you get in or not. Azula narrowed her eyes, almost imperceptibly. This woman was certainly trying her nerves. Were she not a shinobi, Azula would already have put her in her place. I see. Well then, what is this evaluation you have set for me? I'll tell you in a moment. Before we get to that, I want you to answer something for me first, girlie. Oh? And what is that? The Hokage sent me that recommendation several weeks ago. Why did you only ask to come in a few days ago? I am new to this land. The land where I come from is very different culturally, and we even use a different writing system. I wanted to take time to learn how to interact with the people here and how to read and write in the same way that you do. It would have been foolish to become a member of the justice systems, no matter how skilled I am, without such basic knowledge. Amaji leaned back in her chair and huffed out another smoky breath. I'd ask where you were from, but the Hokage made it clear that it's classified. Another unknown, I hate those, I really do. You did pass the first test, however. Had you given another answer that implied that you were lazy or just forgetful, I would have kicked you out immediately. As it is, we can move on to the fun part of your evaluation. The older woman pressed a button on her desk and said, "Please send Nagata in." A moment later, the door opened and a young man walked in with a dog at his side. The man had shaggy brown hair and had red markings on his face. He wore a black jumpsuit under a green flak jacket with the Konoha leaf and the police force emblem on his left and right shoulders. The dog at his side was large enough to come up to his elbow and was covered reddish-brown fur. The man straightened up a bit as he addressed the police chief. You called for me, ma'am? Amaji nodded. Yes, Nagata, I did. This is the person the Hokage recommended. I want you to take her on your route today and see how she performs. Report back to me when you finish this evening. Yes, ma'am. The man said, before turning to Azula. Follow me, please. Azula nodded and followed the man out the door and through the building. As they walked, the man turned to her and spoke. I'm Inuzuka Nagata, by the way. Beside him, the dog gave a loud bark. Oh, and this is Ogi, my partner. Uzumaki Azula, was the short reply the girl gave. The Fire Nation princess was in a bad mood after dealing with that crude woman and was in no way inclined to make small talk with a stranger. Nagata, however, either did not pick up on that or just didn't care because he kept on talking. You're pretty young to be joining the military police, even if it's just on the civilian side. But I guess you must be pretty good if the Hokage gave you a recommendation. Sorry about the chief, by the way, she's just a little gruff with newcomers. Once you prove yourself, she'll warm up to you fast enough. Just don't piss her off, she's real tough. She fought in the last war at a young age, and rumor has it that she even got sent on an S-rank mission or two, but that could just be idle gossip. Anyway, I should probably explain how this whole evaluation will work. For the first half or so of my route, you're going to observe me and how I interact with the civilians and shinobi. During the second half, I'm going to let you take over and see how you handle things based on what you've learned. If you do well, you get to join the civilian side of the police. That means that you will deal with the civilians of Konoha more than the shinobi. That made Azula glance at the man. Why don't you have the shinobi and non-shinobi police deal with both groups? Oh, we do, he replied. We just try to make sure that non-shinobi officers deal with non-shinobi and vice versa. We've found that civilians react better to non-shinobi officers, they feel more at ease talking to them. Likewise, shinobi feel more at ease with shinobi officers. They tend to feel like they are above the civilians, or at least like the civilians can't understand them. Of course, this is a relatively new system. All the officers were shinobi until the Uchiha clan got wiped out. They were in charge of the military police before then. That was about 3 years ago now. It was such a tragedy. Azula filed that information away in her mind. The Uchiha had been the ones in charge before? And they had been wiped out. Perhaps this had to do with Sasuke's quest for revenge. Although these facts were idle curiosities to the girl, they could prove useful later. Azula brought herself out of her thoughts and began to focus on studying Nagata's interactions with the people of Konoha. For much of the walk, Nagata just walked around the city blocks looking around and observing people. Occasionally someone would walk up to him and start a small conversation, where they would ask how he and his family were, then he would introduce Azula to them. The conversations always ended with the people wishing Azula good luck and walking off to continue whatever errand they were on after giving Ugi a pat on the head. Twice on the route, Nagata had to break up a small fight in the streets. One of the fights was between a particularly volatile couple, who couldn't seem to stop shouting at each other until they were threatened with being taken down to the police headquarters. The second fight was a brawl between two young genin, who had an argument over who had done better on some mission. They didn't use any ninjutsu, only threw fists at each other and disrupted the restaurant where they had been eating. This fight was actually the easier of the two to handle. Nagata simply pulled the two apart, told them that their behavior was unacceptable and threatened to call their sensei. Finally, after about 3 hours, Nagata turned to Azula. Okay, Uzumaki-san, it's your turn. It's been pretty quiet today, so I don't think you will have to worry about much. Just do what I did and you'll be fine. Azula folded her arms and huffed out a breath, before walking ahead of the man, saying fine. This doesn't seem too hard. Azula continued to walk down the street observing people and keeping an eye out for trouble, turning down different streets whenever Nagata told her to. Before long, another hour had passed and the sun began to set in the sky. All right, Uzumaki-san, Nagata said, stepping up beside Azula. It looks like we are just about done for the day. We'll head back to headquarters and let the chief know. A shout from around the corner of the street interrupted the man, and he and Azula ran towards the noise. Once they cleared the street corner, they found an older-looking man standing outside a shop shouting down the street after someone. The two slowed down as they neared the man, and Nagata tapped the man on the shoulder to get his attention. Hey, what happened? Why all the shouting? The old man turned to look at Nagata with frustration and worry in his eyes, before he recognized Nagata as a member of the military police. Ah, Shinobi-san! The old man shouted. A man just ran out of my store stealing several items. Some of them were explosive tags. Nagata's eyes widened. Shit, he growled, sorry Uzumaki-san, but it looks like we'll have to wait a little longer to get back to headquarters. Come on, we have to catch that man. It didn't take long for them to catch up to the would-be thief. He appeared to be a man in his late 30s with graying hair and wearing simple brown shorts and a gray shirt. The would-be thief was all but stumbling through the crowded streets, carrying a small bundle in his arms. Upon seeing the man, Nagata shouted out at him. Hey, stop! The shout got the man's attention and he turned to look over his shoulder at the two pursuing him. As he did, he lost track of his surroundings and stumbled into the back of a woman who had been walking ahead of him, knocking both her and himself over. The man managed to get to his feet by the time Azula and Nagata were around 20 feet away from him. The man's eyes widened as he saw the military police insignia on Nagata's shoulder, and he reached into the bundle he had been carrying and pulled out a small piece of paper. That's an explosive tag, shouted Nagata, stopping where he was. The thief's face split into a crazed smile. That's right. And if you or that girl come any closer, I'll set it off and blow everyone on this block to hell. The threat made Nagata tense up. Damn. Azula, think you can distract him long enough for me to get that tag away from him, he whispered. Azula smirked. I can do better. Be ready to subdue him. Hey! What are you two whispering about? Shouted the thief. Back off already. Azula simply gave the man a smirk, before sliding her left foot forward in a fire-bending move and sending a stream of blue fire towards the man's feet. The jet of azure flame hit the man's legs before he could react, and he fell to the ground screaming. As the man fell, Nagata threw a kunai that pierced the explosive tag and pinned to the wall of a building behind the thief. The now disarmed thief began to get up but was stopped when Oogie pounced on him and began growling and baring his teeth at the man. Nagata turned to Azula and gave her a small smile. That was well done. I'm glad you went for his feet and not his hands with that fire, you could have set it off and blown us all away. Well, now we need to get this guy down to headquarters and report back to the chief. Nagata got out a pair of handcuffs with chakra restraining seals on them and placed them on the thief. Once that was done, it was a simple matter of escorting him back to headquarters. On the way there, the man tried to explain that he had only been stealing the shinobi tools because he was desperate. He claimed that bandits outside of Konoha were holding his daughter prisoner and ordered him to get the equipment in exchange for her release. Nagata, for his part, just told the man that he could retell his story back at the military police headquarters and that they judged the legitimacy of his story then. But even if it was true, he would still face punishment. Once the three made it back to the headquarters, Nagata took the man to the cells in the building before taking Azula back to the waiting area outside the police chief's office. Azula sat in the waiting room for a few minutes before Nagata came back out. Okay, Azula. The chief is ready for you now. I'm heading down to the interrogation area to deal with our friend. With that said, the Inuzuka walked off down the hallway. Azula stood up and once again entered the police chief's office. When she walked in the door, she saw that the Sarutobi woman was standing at the back of the room, looking at the lone window in the room. So I'm told you did rather well on the test. You handled the situation with the explosive tag well. What's more, you showed an ability to work with others. I guess you really are worth my time after all. Well then, welcome the military polis of Konoha. You will be joining the civilian branch as a junior officer, Amagi said as she turned to look at Azula. Azula gave the older woman a small smirk of triumph. Thank you, ma'am. I'm glad that I was able to display my skill. If Amagi heard the gloating in Azula's tone, she ignored it. The police chief just turned to sit in her chair before continuing with the conversation. I'll assign you a partner tomorrow, but for now let's get some details down on what you will be doing. You will first and foremost protect the peace of the village. You, as part of the civilian branch, will be dealing mostly with other civilians. You may be called to assist in detaining or arresting unruly shinobi, should members of the shinobi branch require assistance and believe you capable of rendering it. Furthermore, you will be called to act as a supplementary soldier should the village be attacked. This means that you will mostly be in charge of escorting civilians to safety and aiding shinobi where and when you can. However, because this is quite a hazardous occupation, especially for a civilian, you do receive a substantial amount of money for your paycheck. Speaking of which, here you go. Amagi finished her sentence while holding out a small paper envelope to Azula. Azula took the envelope and opened it. Inside were several Rio notes. After taking a moment to observe the numbers on the notes, Azula's eyes widened. That was indeed a substantial amount of money. That's your first paycheck, Uzumaki. You will get one every month as long as you are part of my police force. Well, I think that's enough for tonight. Be here tomorrow at noon to meet your partner. Dismissed. As Azula left the building, she couldn't help but feel a little giddy. Now she was making this much money a month, she could begin taking steps to increase the manner in which she and Naruto lived and bring them closer to a level of comfort that she was more used to. She also thought of a good way to spend some of the money immediately. With a goal in mind, she sped off to the shopping district to try and get to one of stores before they closed. A few days later, when Naruto woke up in the morning, the first thing he noticed is that Azula wasn't there. He guessed that she was probably changing out of her pajamas and decided to get dressed himself. Once he had clothed himself, he exited the room and entered the dining area where he saw Azula sitting at the table. In front of her on the table was a rather large box. Azulaheim, what's that? He asked. Azula smiled at him before standing up and bringing the box over to him. This, Naruto, is your birthday present. Naruto blinked. He had forgotten it was his birthday. To him it was usually just a day of disappointment, so he had resolved himself to just see it as a normal day, like any other day. So even when Azula had brought up the idea of celebrating his birthday a few days beforehand, he had actually forgotten about it. But she had remembered, and she had even gotten him a present. Those simple facts filled Naruto with immeasurable happiness. The young boy rushed over to the princess and gave her a heartfelt hug. A hug which, much like the last one he had given Azula when they last discussed his birthday, filled her with a strange emotion which had trouble identifying. In an effort to distance herself from the feeling and to get the box out from between her and Naruto, she pushed the boy away gently. I'm glad you're happy, Naruto, but you should probably open your present. Naruto looked up at the older girl, beaming. Okay, Azulaheim. The boy took the box from Azula's hands and laid it on the ground before tearing into it with a stunning amount of ferocity. Once he got the package open, he pulled out its contents. In his hands, he held a brand new outfit. It consisted of black, loose-fitting pants and shirt, with red armor plates on the biceps and forearms. It also had armor plates that fell down to cover the outer parts of the thighs, and it had sectional armor on the chest area. Do you like it? Azula asked him. I found a shop that sold armor designed after the type that Shinobi wore during your Great Clan Wars, and I thought a set might be good for you. Of course, I asked them put together a modified set, so that it could more closely resemble the armor of my country. I put it on a rush order obviously as well. See the armor on the chest area? That is more or less what the armor from my homeland looks like. Although I suppose it's your homeland as well, Naruto. Naruto wiped some tears out of his eyes. Thanks, Azulaheim, I love it. What do you mean it's my homeland as well, though? Well, it should be fairly obvious, the girl stated. You and I are family, no matter how distant. That means my family is also yours, and my land is yours too. You will always be as welcome there as you are here, if not more so. Naruto stood up and gave Azula another hug, this one lasting longer and seeming to be more intense than the last. Thanks, Azulaheim. All of this, means a lot to me. Thank you so much for being here for me, for caring for me. Azula was overwhelmed by the uncommon emotion once more, but she fought it down again. No problem, Naruto. That is what family is for after all. Hinata looked up from her pillow when she heard the knock on her door. Her face was stained with dry tears, as it had been for the last few days. She had been locked in her room ever since her encounter with Azula. She had told her father that she had felt ill and had done a decent job of convincing him that she was. In truth, she just wanted to be alone. Her door opened and Hayashi Hyuga stepped into the girl's room. He looked at her with worry in his eyes. Contrary to popular belief, Hayashi did love his eldest daughter. He loved her more than life itself, but she was born a Hyuga. What was more, she was born into the main family and was destined to be head of clan when she reached adulthood. That meant that had an unsealed Byakugan, something that other nations would do anything to get their hands on. She had already been kidnapped once when she a toddler, a fact that proved to Hayashi that he could not always protect his little girl, even in the confines of his own home. So she must therefore be able to protect herself. That was why he was so hard on her, and why he always pushed her to train. He wished he let her live a peaceful life, but they lived in a cruel world of assassins and soldiers, and the only to keep her safe was to make her one of the assassins. Hinata, he spoke, his deep voice filling the room. It is time for you to come train. You have been in your room for nearly a week now. I know you were not really sick, but I left you alone because I understand the need for solitude on occasion. But now it is time to resume your studies. Hinata nodded meekly and slowly slid out of her bed. Yes, father. I understand. Once she was up, she followed him through the compound to the dojo. There she found her cousin waiting for them. So she was to fight Neji again, was she? This would probably end in disappointment for everyone then. She was capable of beating some of the other branch children, but she had never once beaten Niji. Hinata entered the sparring ring with her cousin and gave him the customary bow between opponents, as he did the same. As the two bowed their heads near each other, she heard Niji whisper to her, "You should just surrender soon, Hinata-sama. It's clear you have been in no state to spar, give up quickly and save us both some time." As the two straightened up and took their fighting stances, Niji's words rang in her mind. "Give up, give up, give up." Yet even as the words repeated themselves, they changed from her cousin's voice into that of Uzumaki Azula's. "You will never be worthy of Naruto. Give up." That girl was a monster, through and through. There was nothing good about her at all, and yet, she was the one who held Naruto's attention. She was the one who held his affection. Naruto had never even noticed Hinata. Not for all her admiration or kindness. But he did notice and care for that cruel girl, and that filled Hinata with something she wasn't used to feeling. Rage, pure undiluted rage. It was an anger white-hot and blinding in its intensity. She deserved Naruto's attention, his affection, not that monster, and she would have it. Hinata swore to herself then that by any means necessary she would get Naruto's affection and love. His admiration would belong to her, and her alone, and if she couldn't get that by being kind and quiet, then it was time for a change. And what better time to make a change than here in this room, sparring against her cousin who always mocked her. As the match began, Hinata came at Niji with everything she could muster. The small girl could not match her cousin's innate skill in the Juken style, but she more than made up it with passion and ferocity. But in the end she saw it was a losing battle, she could not hold off Niji for very long. But instead of giving up, she came up with a plan. Hinata blocked one of Niji's palm strikes and then purposefully exposed a minor weak point on her right side. Niji, thinking she had gotten sloppy, took the bait and struck her with a strong, painful blow. Hinata grimaced and then smiled, because she had tricked her cousin. As he extended his arm to strike her side, he had left his chest open to attack, so before he could bring his guard back up, she lunged forward, putting all of her sorrow, anger, and pent-up aggression into one final strike, trying to make it hit home. It paid off. Her palm struck Niji hard enough to knock him to the ground and send him sliding a few feet across the floor, until his head was outside the sparring ring. Hinata had just won by getting a ring out on her opponent, but rather pause and enjoy her victory, she turned to her father. "Excuse me, father, but may I leave now? I have much to think on." Hayashi, who was completely stunned, simply nodded, unsure of how to react. Hinata quietly left the dojo and headed for her room. As Hayashi looked between his equally stunned nephew and the doorway where his eldest daughter had just left, he felt himself trying to reconcile his emotions. He knew he should be proud that his daughter was making progress, but instead all he felt was even more worry than he had before.